It's great to meet you, man. Thank you for taking a minute out for the show today.
Yeah, absolutely. Excited to get to talk to you and share a little bit more about what I've been doing, but also learn a little bit more about what you guys are doing. It's definitely an interesting podcast for sure.
Yeah, I just love delving into all of the different flavors. So I got the jazz feed and then I got the famous interviews. So we're getting into everything. And by day I do IT, so software and that world is definitely right up my avenue. But I want
Nice.
to begin before we get into your work by asking you this. 5 years ago, this pandemic threw everybody into a tailspin. How did you get through that whole coronavirus time, and how has it shaped the way you are today?
Oh, yeah, that's a really good question. I had just moved to Brooklyn, I guess maybe 6 months before the pandemic hit. And the neighborhood I was in, Bay Ridge, it was actually sort of, if you remember when the pandemic hit, it hit in Seattle and then it hit on the East Coast a little bit after that. But the neighborhood where I was the first one of the first neighborhoods to be hit on the East Coast. And we all came down with the coronavirus, not knowing what it was at the time, because it hadn't made that sort of national news. And we were all the worst sick we've ever been. And my wife at the time was working, she was helping with daycares in the Brooklyn area and down in Coney Island and a few other places. And she was seeing so many people that had lost family members quickly, and these and driving and going through the different areas on the subway. Especially, she'd go to there was this hospital that was really famous for having these trucks and containers of people that were just they didn't have room for in the hospital, and so they had been putting these people in trucks. And so it was a really bizarre. It was my first time on the East Coast. We had just moved there to help start up this business, and so already just learning New York and what it's like to live there versus the West Coast was a bit of culture shock. But then you throw in this pandemic, and it was crazy. And I think the way that we what we ended up doing was we were in this little apartment in Bay Ridge, and we ended up moving out to Long Island at the time, buying a little house there, just to sort of get some space around us. And I retreated into this little basement and started to focus on. My previous career. I had been probably since I was 17 until probably 30. Professional musician. I went to school for music and started off playing in jazz combos and then rock bands and then getting into the music scene. But I left it behind once I got back into software and got married and had a kid and had to like actually start making real money. Um, and I had not really gone back to it, but during the pandemic, I just decided what the hell, and I bought a new keyboard. I bought a set of V drums, electric drums, and a new bass, and just started recording. And so I'd spend my days working on the startup and my nights um, working on music. And it just that creative outlet. I think they sort of fed off each other
Yeah.
a little bit, and it was really nice. And so I felt like that time for me anyway was really like I remember back in the day when we would be in bands and we would all spend our time in these basements, practicing, rehearsing, and then trying to get a gig somewhere. And instead, I was, recording and just distributing music right away, and it was really fun. And I enjoyed that part of the pandemic for quite a while until I did finally, our my family back on the West Coast um, started to say, "Hey, we're all alone here. We need some help. Can you come back out?" And so that's when I had the chance to go visit Kansas City, actually. And my friend Thad, who lives in Kansas City, I drove through. That was my first exposure. Really fun. But yeah, that was on a long drive
Yeah.
back from New York to Portland.
So let me ask you this. If we wanted to get a handle on what you do on a daily basis for a living today, I put you in front of a bunch of 12-year-olds, it's career day, you're in a school. How do you answer one of those kids that ask you what you do for a living?
Well, I guess purely from a high at a high very high level, what I do is help entrepreneurs, people that want to build a new startup or a new idea in software. I help set them up with the right tools, the right process, and the right team to get that done. It's There's a little bit of AI involved, but there's a lot more people involved in that process. And that's I love the work. Sometimes it's very up and down because startups go as quickly as they come, and so it can be a little disappointing when you put a lot of effort into a startup and it fails quickly. But you also learn from those mistakes and move on. So I think what I always tell my kids is um, what I do and what I hope they will be able to do in their careers is I have been given enough opportunity to where I have room to fail and learn from that failure and get better. And that's kind of what I help other people do as well is uh, build something quickly, learn from the mistakes and move on and get better.
So what did you want to be when you were a kid? When you were 12 years old, what was your dream gig?
I had a number of dreams. I think at that point, I wanted to be a professional baseball player for sure. If that failed, I was sure I was going to be a professional drummer.
Yeah.
And had that failed, then I was going to fall back on science. And at that time, I don't like this was the '80s. I don't think I really thought that computers was a real job until my dad started. My dad was a they called a systems analyst at Freightliner here in Portland, and I just assumed that he just he wore his tie and his suit every day, and I just assumed he was miserable because he would come home, leave really early and come home really late. We'd see him for dinner, and that's about it. That was about it. And so I thought the one thing I didn't want to do was be in an office. I wanted to do anything but that. I think because of that. But as I got older, I started to sort of see I think that my dream jobs went from outside to inside to then sitting at a to sitting at a desk. So I've been lucky to actually do one. I was a professional drummer for, like I said, about 15 years, and enjoyed that. But there's a lot of you know shortcomings, I guess, if you want to have a family, if you want to live in one place, to being a professional musician, especially if you want to earn a living that's somewhat comfortable. So
Yeah.
yeah,
What was
that
the I'm curious, what was the first live show you saw when you were growing up? The first live music show that blew you away?
I think the one that blew me away, and it's going to sound really cheesy, I guess, coming from a jazz guy, but it was the early '80s, and I went to see my first like big concert, and it was Huey Lewis and the News, and if you remember, he was really big there for a while,
You know what's
and
so you know what's so weird about you saying that? One of my favorite jazz musicians of all time, his name is Corey Weeds. He
oh
owns, he used to own a club in Vancouver in Canada, and he has a label now that's stellar. He's a tenor saxophonist. He's amazing. He hooked up
oh
with the local Kansas City guy named Chris Hazelton, and they're a Hammond B3 musician. They came, they're covering the album Sports. And the
oh
reason why
yeah
they did it is because 13 years ago, they went on tour in a van that wouldn't pop the CD out, and the only CD that was in there was Huey Lewis and the New Sports. So they're sitting
oh that's
there
funny.
talking to each other, and they're like, "What if we did a jazz gloss?" They played it the other day. It was
Oh, that's awesome.
amazing, dude. So it's funny you say
Yeah.
that.
That's awesome. Yeah, I, it was at the time the Portland Memorial Coliseum, and I had never been to a show. I've been to Blazer games, but I'd never been to like a big arena, and we didn't have a lot of arena rock type things. Still, even in Portland, we don't get very much of it. And so to see that, like that many people there, and the sort of real rock star approach to
Yeah.
all, but the thing I remember the most is the bass player, this tall, skinny guy, and he just would sit there with this cigarette hanging off of his mouth the whole time, playing bass. And I just kept thinking, how does he do that? Like,
Yeah.
how can he keep that in there? One, and then how does the smoke not get in his face and drive him
Yeah.
crazy? But
It,
yeah, it was an impressive show for sure.
I thought the same thing because I remember Eddie Van Halen used to put it in his
Put it in the
strings up top.
yeah, right,
And it was
yeah,
cool. It was like a sparkler kind of punk, and it would
yeah,
just go around. It was awesome.
yeah,
So
yeah. I don't know how people do that on stage. Like
I don't either.
I could never. I had friends that would occasionally partake in some other forms of smoking as well, and I just I if I don't have my mind, I did a lot of like really complex music as well, but if I don't have my mind in it and
Yeah,
focus, I don't know how they can do it. But
I don't either.
man, but yeah, it's a whole nother level of skill and talent, I think, that I just don't possess.
I get. I
Caffeine,
totally. I,
alcohol, maybe, but that's about it.
that's it. Absolutely. So let me ask you this: who's been kind of your inspiration, your hero in your life, and everything that you've done?
Oh, I've had a number. I was lucky enough to grow up in a time where mentors and mentees, that was still a thing, right? Like you could sit down. I had some really great on the music side, jazz musician. I remember Charlie Gray at Portland State. I did a number of gigs with him outside of that the school, but he was my jazz professor and really influential. Him and along with Joel Bluestone, who was also our percussion instructor there, really, and all the guys that were there with me too. Like it was such a great scene that we had like 15 or 20 percussion majors, which in the city of Portland you wouldn't think there was more than a couple. But some really great musicians there, really inspirational work. But on the software side, I've always been a Woz fan, Wozniak, and Steve Jobs to a lesser extent. I was never the polished turtleneck kind of guy. I was more the guy. I'm the drummer, right? I sit in the back, I do the work, and that's who Woz was. And I always really enjoyed his approach to software engineering, but also just his approach to life, where it's just he's just trying to do something innovative. He's just trying to push something new out, and is really excited and jazzed about new technology.
Yeah.
And that's the way I see software and really new hardware as it's like when you're a kid and the new toy comes out and you're super excited. I still get that when a new feature comes out, or when I see a new piece of software that really like helps me with a certain aspect or something that I've had trouble with. I get really excited about those things. So Woz for sure, and then so many on the music side. But I think that the mains were my instructors at PSU were just next level supportive throughout everything I did.
So as a technology guy, when you look at your life, I mean, we're probably in the same age range. We've seen the rotary phone in a home
Yeah,
commonly used
yeah.
to AI on a computer that can tell you anything you want to know. That's a pretty big spectrum of things. So my question to you is this: in your lifetime of being a consumer and using these things, what's your favorite piece of software and favorite piece of hardware?
Oh, um, well, software for me, it's still the things that I get the most blown away by is uh, less the AI stuff. So I do a lot of work with AI and automation and things like that. So I really appreciate the things that are happening around Chat GPT and OpenAI. But I also see some severe flaws in how those things are being adopted and used, and the way people approach the an AI tool as a way to replace a person instead of enhance a person.
Yeah.
So those things are still sort of worry me to a certain degree. But I still go back to the early days of like GarageBand and Logic, and I just remember like the ability to go in and make cuts and adjust things or loop things and be able to then loop two more things and be like I just remember thinking like this is magic.
Yeah.
How can everyone how can everyone not want to be a musician after this, because it's so much fun, and just to be able to see a piece come to life for you like that, and be able to do it in some cases on your own, right? Like I I have seen, I had a friend who built a whole label here in Portland, just off of his Mac. Was it an LC2, I think? And just recording friends. They would come over, and then he would splice it all together and put it together, and made a whole career out of that.
Yeah,
And I just think like that to me is the most amazing. That combination of when that sound card came out, that they were able to then be able to record real digital audio and then be able to push it out and burn your own CD. Well, at that time, right, burn a CD and be able to hand that off to your friends to listen to.
yeah,
That to me, that was the most amazing thing for sure.
yeah, for sure. So, what is it that gets you up in the morning, feet on the ground, to give you the energy to do the work that you do, to take care of your own soul? What is that for you every day?
Well, I mean, I think out obviously it's my family and my kids first off. Like their energy and their it's such an amazing thing to bring up kids like my family and the way that they interact with each other. It's just such a positive area to be around, and my wife really is the one that brings that together. But I think for me, in terms of the work, what still makes me excited is as a software developer is to see that those ideas come to life, especially so quickly now, right? Like I can come up with an idea for let's say a chat or communication tool that's built into one of our customers um, software, and I can come up with that, model it, and build it out. Now I can do that in less than a day, right? I can do things really quickly. um and I to see, like, to me it's like that first time you run it and you open the page and you see the thing that you were just working on, the code, actually turn into something that you can start to interact with.
Yeah,
That's still the most fun for me, and it still feels like magic. I have a lot of uh business product manager type folks that tell me that, like, they still feel like software is magic, that these are these wizards that are doing things. And I get that, because I still feel that way sometimes too when I see some, like, a line of code. Sometimes I'll write code, and that first time it will compile without an error, and which still even after all these years, I still get excited by that. And to see it come up and work, it does feel like magic sometimes. And you start to throw AI and some more conversational logic into these things, and yeah, it's really exciting time. It's a really scary time in some ways, but not for the reasons most people think. I'm not worried about AI taking over the world. Obviously, I'm more worried about people trying to replace their team members with an AI, and then and as they are starting to realize, I think more and more that that doesn't actually, like, it's really exciting for the first few days, and then all of a sudden that the things, it starts to forget things, it starts to hallucinate, things start to break. It doesn't have that same reliability, and to say that a machine is less reliable than a person, it might be a little controversial, but it's 100% true.
yeah, yeah.
And so I think those are the things that still worry me on that side.
You just brought up a really good memory I had of when I was in the eighth grade in 1987. We did some bastardized coding for Oregon Trail, some weird,
Oh,
wonky version, and we were
yeah,
like,
yeah,
"Oh my God, this line of numbers turned into
yeah,
this magical thing that we all love playing.
yeah.
It's so
that
cool, you know?"
that's why I actually still I have a Commodore. I know you can't see it behind me, but a Commodore 64, and that's one of the first times I learned computing was seventh grade, I think.
Yeah,
Um, and on the Commodore Basic, and just putting those go to line 10 and loops, and putting those together, creating little, like, I think we created tic tac toe and solitaire games. And
yeah.
yeah, that really was what got me started. Was excited about software.
Yeah. So, and when you look back on your career and everything that you've done and accomplished, and more importantly, evolved to, what are you the proudest of?
Ooh. I guess. I think for me, the thing that I'm most proud of is the the travel that we did. We so when I started my first startup, I'd spent most of my life on the West Coast, in specifically in the Portland area, and worked for an organization called Mercy Corps. And Mercy Corps started to send me out to do things out in the field, and which as a software developer seems counterintuitive. But I started working with people. I've met some amazing folks in Kenya, Afghanistan. I went to Lebanon, Jordan, Haiti. I went not the top of the list for most tourist destinations, but in terms of the people and the things that you do there, and the places that are like just amazing places and amazing people. And I think for me, like I that really sort of kicked off my career into sort of seeing I want to see more of the world. I want to work with more people remotely. But I also want to just build things that help people, not just build things that make people more money, right? And I think that's always been my goal. Is even in a more corporate um, world, and a more straight, venture capital sort of approach to life that I have now. Um, I still want to build products that people help people, right? That are enjoyable, that aren't just about making money. And I think that's the thing I'm most proud of is like all my startups and all of the products I've worked on, and even the startups that I help right now are all focused on things that enable people to do their jobs better, have a easier time doing that, and also I think overall just remove some of the boring aspects of their life so that they can focus on the creative and the innovative. And I think that's the thing I'm definitely most proud of is we've stuck by that, even though it's cost us, I think, in certain times, because we didn't go for those big scores and the big cash. But in the end, I think we've helped a lot of people, met a lot of really great people, and I think that impact will be much more lasting than the short term impact of a couple of big paydays.
So at the end of the day, everyone has a perception of you, family, friends, clients, everyone that you know, everyone you work with, but you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
Hmm. I still think I have a bit of that imposter syndrome a lot of the time, where think, I don't know what I did to deserve to be here, and why there aren't other people that that could be doing this better. But I think for myself, like I one of the things I did recently was I decided to change the process and how I manage my teams. And in doing that, I kind of ended up writing a book about it, and getting it published. And I was thinking about how much of this is reality versus how much of it is actually what I want reality to be, and what I want people to see in our process, and in me. Um, and I think I realized along the way that it doesn't really, like, the aspiration is just as important as the reality. And it's a lot of it is about the journey. One of my favorite quotes from actually George Lucas was about how when you start a company, the thing that you it's very much like, speaking of the Oregon Trail, it's like a pioneer. You get in the back of this wagon, and you just start going, and you're all about getting to that destination, right? You're trying to get from point A to point B. And once you get there, though, things aren't ever what you thought they were going to be, right? And that you really, what you have to focus on is the journey, right? And what happens along the way is tends to be much more interesting, much more impactful than that final endpoint. And I think that's the thing that I hope people take away from their work with me, their time with me, is that they enjoyed the journey. Maybe we didn't quite make it to that place that we wanted to, but that we had a impactful time. We helped people, helped each other, and hopefully they enjoyed the work, right? Because I more than anything, I don't like the word work in the context of making it sound like it's a terrible, slow, drudgery thing, and that there's that work life balance that people talk about. And I just think of it all as part of life. right? And I hope that that's what they see. It's just like I enjoyed everything that I did. I try to make it enjoyable for everybody else, and try to make it about the journey less and less about the destination.
I love it. So, if anyone wants to dig into your world, they have questions, they want to hire you, your books, any of the good business, where do they go?
Yeah, they can start with Buildly. Buildly.io is my company, and they can certainly go and check out everything. Sort of links off of that. But for the rest of the stuff, I have nullrecords.com, which is where my music and everything else that I do kind of gets connected through there.
Right on. I love it, man. Greg, wonderful. Thank you so much. It's great to meet you. Continued success with everything.
Yeah, thanks. It was nice to meet you too.
Yeah, thank you, man.